From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. We have a new THERAPOD. It happens to be Jim's mom. We can confirm she is a listener. It will be a different show from here on out, folks. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
So, Nick, I was reading the Bible this morning.
Bullshit.
I was reading the Bible, doing my taxes early, and just doing all the right things. You know, that's what I do.
I love how from here on out, you're just going to just completely ignore everything else that you've said on
like
the podcast.
It's never happened.
For the last 48 episodes.
You should have seen it.
And now you're just going to be...
I went as white as a ghost when I saw that, because like we get the little message that says, hey, this person just became a Patreon. It comes to our email. And I see it, and I see Tracy Replogle. I'm like, oh, God, that's my mom. Like, I'm done. Like, that's the end of this. She's going through the Patreon, just, you know, what? Like, so that's it. I just started having these, like, Vietnam flashbacks of the book club, chapter 3, where 20 minutes of profanity. So, like, Here we go. This is it. So she called me on my birthday, and I was like, hi, Mom. You know, she was like, hey, happy birthday, no. And then she was like, so I've been listening to the show. I have some thoughts. But I'm not going to talk to you about them right now.
I'm losing you.
I'm losing you.
Hold on.
I gotta go.
I'm driving through a tunnel.
Yep. So welcome to the brand new Pod Therapy format, in which, I'm going to be very polite, very appropriate now. No, just, you know, she's listening. So, hi, Mom. I'm excited to have you as a listener. And expect nice reviews, please. But yeah, I have to, like, guard all the... Oh, and she also joined Twitter just because... She knows we have a very active Twitter.
I thought so, yeah, because I saw that she started following
us. Her Twitter name is literally Jim's mom. Yeah. It's like Jim's... That's it. It's just Jim's mom. At Jim's mom. And I was like, God, here we go. Like everything I do now. My Twitter's a dangerous landscape, too. So I'm pretty nervous.
Yeah.
But it's also, we did my birthday yesterday. We did karaoke.
We did.
The great feat was accomplished, Nick, and you got up there and you killed. You slayed. It was standing ovation. It was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
A serenade of Justin Bieber's Love Yourself, and it was glorious. You were liberally changing the lyrics to a lot more aggressive profanity version of the song, but as you've noted, that was the original. So, well done.
Yeah. And I have to admit, it was the most fun I've had against my will.
Well, then you, sir, have not been to Amsterdam. I will show you how much fun you can have. Hi, Mom. So anyway.
It was a fun time. We had a good time.
No, it was. It was a lot of fun. And we did, as promised, take videos. There's a video of that song on there. There's also a video of Build Me Up Buttercup, a duet that Nick and I did in front of our audience on stage. So that was a lot of fun with choreographed dancing. Without the choreography part, and it was good. It was a lot of fun. So those videos are up on Patreon. If you are not yet a Patreon, this is where your dollar goes a really long way.
For
a
as
buck,
little as $1.
For $1, that's not a bad.
And I'll tell you what I would do. I would become a Patreon, and then I would cancel it next month.
Yeah. Just get in there and get these videos.
If you decide to do that, I won't even be upset.
There's going to be a whole bunch of all of a sudden members, and
gonna...
they're just disappeared. Like, oh, what happened to all those guys? They're just looky-loos. They just popped in to grab the dirt, download that into a Senate database in case these guys ever run for office, and we're good. Yep. But a lot of fun. And thank you for all the birthday wishes on Twitter and Facebook, and everybody that was just showing love. Thank you, guys. I don't know if you noticed anything different about me, Nick, but I'm 3% more attractive. Technically, I am 3% more attractive right now. Can you notice it? I'm 1 year older.
Yeah,
exactly.
I can
3%.
see. Yeah, a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. A little bit. Yep. 3%. Not 5%.
No. It's definitely not
5%, but it's
definitely not even 4.
Yeah, no, but right there, 3%.
Right.
So if I had some kind of cool Tinder profile or something, people would be noticing right now. As soon as that little number goes up a notch, they'd go, oh, I don't know what it is about this guy, but He seems slightly less repulsive. That's all I'm going for. That's all I need. That's the only feedback I want. Jim's 3% better. So
those are some good goals.
Yep. So we've got some cool stuff to burn through today. We've got lots of good stuff. We've got a follow-up question today, which we love getting, or follow-up note anyway, some feedback about something that went down. So this one says, "Hey, Jim, Nick, and Laura." Laura got thrown in the mix. "I'm flattered that my letter was a topic of the show and also discussed in the Afterthoughts podcast, which is on our Patreon. Very cool. I thought you might appreciate a follow-up email." Yes, we do. "To recap, my son is recently out of rehab for meth and cocaine. He currently has less than 100 days sober. He and I met his aunt and uncle in Las Vegas for the week over Thanksgiving. I spoke to them and told them that since my son was so recently out of rehab, I wouldn't be drinking while we're up there. I didn't ask them to do anything. I just told them what I was going to do. They responded that that was their plan as well. We all had a wonderful time in Vegas, no alcohol for the entire week. The only issue we ran into was walking around Vegas. The smell of weed is everywhere, but not much I can do about that. Yeah. I just told my son that he wasn't allowed to breathe anytime we were outside, and that obviously a skunk had died nearby." Yeah, I'm sure he believed that. He flew back to Tennessee to live with his aunt and uncle, go to school, and start fresh out there. I'm still very guarded, but cautiously optimistic for him. Thanks for the advice. Data scoop. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
I was wondering how that was going to turn out. So
yeah.
And this is one of those situations I think that sometimes when we're not communicating with how we feel or how we're going to deal with situations where we assume things are going to be more difficult than they really are. Right. And we kind of gave him that advice. Well, hey, just set that precedent. Just say, hey, this is what I'm not planning on drinking and all that. And it sounds like everybody was on the same page. Yeah. So the thing that David really kind of got kind of worked up about and kind of had some anxiety about was something that everybody was already kind of planning on doing that.
And that's the thing I think we all need to remember is that if you're trying to, love somebody who's in recovery, or if you're starting to step into recovery for yourself and you're giving up drinking, you're trying to, live differently, there's a lot of fear of the social aspect. And like, how is it going to go down? Will I, be the same person at parties? Will I, am I going to be able to enjoy Thanksgiving or holidays? And I love this story because we said, hey, come into this with intention. Like, you definitely want to take this seriously. And he did. He contacted his family. He said, hey, FYI, I'm choosing not to drink. I'm just getting you guys some advance notice. And they all said, no, we're on board. And, that's our plan anyway. If you hadn't called, that's what we were going to do because we're aware of this guy's health condition and we just don't care. Why drink? It's just, and it's like we talked about that day when we were talking about this answer. We were talking about, if somebody was allergic to peanuts. Would you serve peanuts? Because you just must have peanuts. No, you just consider it and you'd change the menu. And I think we can do the same thing with people that, aren't drinking right now or whatever. It doesn't matter that much. Most people are willing to let it go. So it sounds like they were, which is awesome. And one thing, though, Nick, I wanted to he didn't ask a question about this, but I think we can give some feedback on. It's interesting because the son is now relocating to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. He's going to live with his aunts and his uncle. He's getting into school out there. He's doing some work out there. And it sounds like there is a desire to sort of fresh start that. And it's interesting because in the past, you and I have talked about geographic cures, right? Right. Where you try to run from the problem by just moving. So, I have a drug addiction. What am I going to do? I'm just going to move. And in this case, though, I think that I wouldn't call this geographic cure. I'd call this part of the treatment plan because the kid did 90 days in a rehab. So there is treatment, and there is work being done. And they are strategically addressing not returning to the environment that was bad for you. Somebody Dimension 6'd that and said this is not a good idea. And they came up with an alternative plan with their treatment team that ultimately sounds like he got a fresh start. Give us some feedback on that because I know that's something that you've thought about.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you. I wouldn't necessarily... For me, I think that when we talk about a geographical cure, excuse me, I think intent has a lot to do with that. Yeah. If you are saying that I'm going to... I'm gonna move across country, and that's gonna be the thing that gets me clean, or that's gonna be the thing that keeps me sober is moving. Mm-hmm. I would say that's a geographical cure. That's probably not gonna work.
Right.
However, if moving is part of the plan and the person understands that this is only one piece of it, I'm moving because it'll be a fresh start for me. I'm moving so that I have put some distance between me and my old playgrounds and playmates.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of moving, I'm also going to be working some kind of a program. I'm going to be
Right.
doing some self-work.
Yes.
I'm going to be doing some therapy. I'm going to be doing all these other things. That is healthy.
Yeah.
And that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm in full support of that. The only thing that, again, like, I think it becomes a problem when people just expect that that's all they have to do. I just move and then that's it. Problem solved.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to happen because you're taking the problem with you.
Yeah, you got it inside. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not that, they don't have drugs in this other place.
Right.
Yeah, no, they do.
Yeah.
There's a lab somewhere in Antarctica where somebody's, still got alcohol in the freezer. So it's a thing. And I agree with that. I think you're right. And I like, you made a note there that I want to really highlight for the listener. If you're going to a new location, and that new location, we have a plan. We're not ending our work and just hoping for the best. There is a continuation of the care continuum, and then that's so appropriate. And it's the right level of care. It's not going to be the same stuff. You hopefully are stepping down, in level of intensity, but that's not geographic cure. That's geographic consideration as part of the treatment plan.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great news.
And some more feedback for David. He kind of ends this, saying, I'm still very guarded and cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
That's a healthy spot to be in.
That's where I want you.
I think that's perfectly fine. And there are going to be setbacks.
Yes.
It's not to say that he's going to relapse, but there's going to be challenges. This isn't, this is a difficult thing that he's doing.
Yes.
It's very complicated. Once, if you're dealing with an addiction, you're in recovery, it's a lot of work, and there's going to be setbacks. Anticipate that. Just be there as a support.
Yeah, and this is, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a tricky thing. So in clinical circles and with families, Nick and I will probably reveal to them, relapse is probably still likely, right? We never treat somebody and think this is it. We put the final nail into their, their stage here. They'll never change. We got it. It's not like that. We're always aware that relapse could happen, and we do want to protect families so they can be thoughtful about how to address it. And I know it's devastating no matter what, but I also want to make sure that families don't overreact, to the place where, like if a relapse happens, they lose all hope, and, they're not being supportive of recovery anymore because they think it doesn't work. And that's not helpful, right? I want you to expect that this can happen, and I want you to have a plan in place for what you do quickly to sort of address that, to move quickly back into treatment, increase the level of care. I don't feel comfortable telling people in recovery to expect relapse, right? Because I'm planting a thought that I don't want to do.
Well,
but with families,
you don't want it to become an excuse either.
Yeah, they go, well, Jim said it could happen.
Well,
yeah, so
this is just part of it.
Yeah,
this is part of
my process.
Yeah.
And I'll deal with them when they do it, and like then we'll sit down and talk about, hey, don't own shame, right? Because that's not going to help. Let's only use helpful thoughts, and let's get active again, get after it, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's awesome news. Congratulations, Data. That's tremendous. And, just stay cautiously optimistic, stay, guarded. And I think keep the eyesight clear. Do not let that person just get back into some kind of like, hidden life where they can kind of do what they want and they're afforded all this trust and given back the keys to the world. No, don't do that. Let's very carefully meter out what kinds of things they're going to have access to, and they have to earn back that trust, I think, for themselves too. It's also just about their own safety. So, great work.
And thank you for the follow-up.
Yeah, we love follow-up.
I love hearing how things turn out. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we are going to answer a question about a new job and new anxiety. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Grae Whittaker, who is also the majority shareholder, emperor of the boardroom, after a very furious coup in which he upped his Theraproducer pledge on Patreon to $26.66
The big boss.
The big boss. So now he's, and diabolical, I'll add, because he got the 666 in there, which I'm sure was no accident. So Grae, we love you. Thank you so much for being so supportive of the show. And for all of you, if you'd like to join the party and help us make the show possible and tap into the special content for patrons only, which now includes embarrassing videos of us doing karaoke, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back, and our next question is about starting a new job and that initial anxiety.
Okay, so this one starts off, salt pork. Hey.
Salt pork.
That's not us, but thank you. I've recently started a new job as an executive assistant to the president of a growing company.
Oh, cool.
I have been an administrative assistant at a similar facility for the past 4 years, and I'm very excited to advance my career. I know that I have the skills and the willpower to perform the new job well, but a lot of responsibility is suddenly being handed to me. I've only been there a few weeks, and I've only been there a week, and it seems that I will be helping to run a small company that is quickly expanding. There are new skills to learn and a lot of organization to be done, but again, I know that I will be able to handle it in the back of my mind. The rest of my brain is screaming in fear. I feel like I'm having minor anxiety attacks throughout the day, including cold sweats and losing my appetite. I was hoping you guys could give me some advice on how to manage my newfound anxiety. Even though I can logically work through my emotions, my body is still reacting in all these uncomfortable ways, reacting in all these uncomfortable ways, and I feel very stressed. I have thought about medication, but everyone I've talked to says that the medication can make them feel fuzzy or cloudy, at least until they find the right one. I really want all of my faculties for the coming weeks and not experiment with this kind of thing. Also, I appreciate my anxiety to a certain extent because I feel it helps motivate me to take action and work through it. I am just not a fan of it going overboard lately despite my best efforts. Thank you guys and keep up the great work. Eric.
Man, I resonate with that so much. Oh my gosh. I feel like that's another one of those that I feel like I could have written. So in regular listeners of the show know that I've already identified I have generalized anxiety disorder. And so I have tried medicines in the past. I have utilized those. I've also utilized other, toolkits and tried to make it work in different ways. And I know, Nick, one of the things he said that I really appreciated was, and this is something that people with anxiety will sometimes tell you, is there's a part of us that doesn't want to address it. There's a part of us that doesn't want, if you could push a button on my forehead and just make it go away, I'm a little fearful to do that because it also has assisted me at times. Like being hypervigilant, I've caught things and solved a problem. And when you're starting a new job and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to live up to this tremendous responsibility, that hypervigilance, that increased awareness, it's something almost empowering about it to an extent, because you almost feel like, okay, this will keep me alive. Like this will help me do and be what I need to be to solve this. And to an extent in my career, that's been true of me. You know, when we started the rehab, I was elevated to a big boss position over a multi-state company, had to figure out how to run it. And, I don't know that on day one I was equal to the task. And so I felt like what this person feels like, holy crap, I hope nobody finds out that I don't know what I'm doing. And or, I feel like I'm running a whole company that, maybe that's too much for any one person to wield. So I identify with Eric's question, but also Eric's feeling of like, okay, but if I take medicine to deal with some of this, will that make me fuzzy? Will I lose a step? There's that fear of that. And then there's also that sense of, okay, maybe right now I need my anxiety. Like maybe it's actually helping. And so, Eric, I just want to identify that I feel how you feel. I know that feeling. And I want to point out as well, though, that your anxiety is crossing into that nether region of unhelpful, right? And so I want to make sure you're acknowledging that, because in your question you describe it as cold sweats. It is causing you to lose a step. And so I want to, open that door to treatment options. So, and Nick, I want to get your feedback on this, but I'll finish this initial comment with this point. With medicine, a lot of people I talk to, a lot of patients I work with, they'll bring this up and they'll say, I don't want to do any medicine because somebody I know didn't like it, or I heard something on the internet, or whatever. And I'm usually the person that's like, hey, can we allow science to tell us what this medicine does? Can we look up the side effects and can we think this carefully? And when we're talking about an antidepressant, we're talking about like a low-dose SSRI, that is among the most gentle medicines in psychiatry that you can take. And so like a sertraline, a Zoloft, that kind of thing, a Prozac, those are very, very gentle. And for some people, it might cause them to feel a little foggy. There are some known side effects. But I don't think that should stop us from approaching all solutions. I want to be open-minded to anything that might help. And so with the care of your doctor and hopefully, the full support of your therapist that I hope's in your life, that would be something I would invite you to consider without that fearfulness that you might be foggy. In my case, when I took sertraline, I felt a little bit foggy. I would take it at night and it would quickly put me to bed. Like I just felt like the wind come out of my sails, and I felt it initially. Most people don't feel anything. And then about 2 weeks in, the therapeutic level of sertraline would hit to the point when it takes the edges off. And so all like an SSRI is going to do is you think about like a line graph of like depression or anxiety with the peaks and the valleys. It makes those peaks a few notches lower and it brings those valleys a few notches up. That's kind of it. You're still going to feel like that tension. You're still going to feel these feelings. You're just going to take the edge off of them so that they're not quite as scary.
Right. And I mean, I'm looking at this, I always look at this from the perspective of an addiction specialist,
right.
Because that's been my background for the last 15 years. But one of the things that is very common for anxiety is benzodiazepines, which do have a potential for abuse. But
right.
Realistically, if you've never had any history of substance abuse, it's unlikely that you would then just pick it up. You're probably going to be okay with that. As far as medications in general, I'm always for behavioral interventions first.
Yeah.
And then if behavioral interventions aren't working, it's a cost-benefit analysis, just like anything else, where you kind of have to look at the cost of having, lost productivity at work because of the anxiety.
Yes.
The benefit of using the medication, and then the cost-benefit analysis of the medication. What may be those side effects.
Absolutely.
Weighing those out, and you can always try it. And if it's not working, just as long as I think the big message that I always tell people is just communicate with your doctor. Just be very open and honest with the symptoms that you're experiencing. Maybe even journal some of them so you remember to bring them up in your next
appointment. I'm glad you said that. You should absolutely be doing that, Eric. Like even if it's just a phone memo or you're texting yourself, I hope that you're noting during the day what your trigger is, what happened, what your automatic thought is, what your cognitive distortion is. And if those words I just said don't make any sense to you, that means it's time for you to go get some therapy because you have some training to do, my friend. That is how I've addressed anxiety. For me, the permanent answer was never medicine. The permanent answer for me was cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's generally the course of treatment that I want to see people do. But also, Nick, I want to echo some of what you said and kind of reaffirm that. So benzodiazepines are things like Klonopin, Xanax. They are better for dealing with acute anxiety. So if you're feeling a very strong panic attack right now, like you're crossing the threshold out of like 6 out of 10, it's coming up to 7 out of 10, it's coming to 8 out of 10, that's where I want to see a benzo, because I think that that's an acute treatment option right there. It deals with it in the moment. I don't think it's the right approach for chronic anxiety. I don't think it's a long-term strategy. To me, it's kind of like an opiate. It's a really good treatment approach for acute pain. It's not a good idea for chronic pain, right? And that's where I want to see something like an SSRI, which I think is better for a more balanced long-term approach. I think it's the right choice. Plus, it doesn't have an addictive potential, and it doesn't have an inebriating potential, whereas a benzo does. But the third thing I wanted to point out here was, and this is something I think is unusual just to us anxiety people. So you know how we talk on the show like we get anxiety about anxiety? Mm-hmm. We also get anxiety about our anxiety medication.
Right.
So like that's a problem. Like sometimes we're like, I don't want to take it because what if something happens? It's like, okay, but now I have anxiety about my medicine. Like that might take away my anxiety.
Right. Yeah. Now, this might actually be a good opportunity to kind of talk about the difference between anxiety and an anxiety disorder.
Sure, yeah.
Because this is something that I think a lot of our listeners end up kind of getting confused.
Yes.
And I think most Americans kind of get confused. So the example that I always like to use is, have I talked about this on the show? I don't know. About the lion in the African wilderness?
Yes.
I have talked about it on the show.
Yeah, when you see the lion...
Yeah, the symptoms that you are experiencing are the same symptoms that you would have with
to survive
anxiety. Yeah. So the only difference between anxiety and an anxiety disorder isn't actually the symptoms, but it's the cause.
Yeah.
Is there a specific cause for the anxiety? If I'm in a life threatening situation, and I'm having sweats, and I'm very alert, and my muscles are tense, and I'm shaking, and my breathing and my heart and all this stuff. Well, that's normal. I should have those symptoms.
Right.
It's when I have those symptoms in an environment or a situation in which there is no actual threat.
Yes.
That's an anxiety disorder, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I would kind of throw it back and kind of look at, now Eric is in this situation because he just started this new job.
Right.
He's got these new circumstances.
Yeah.
He's got all of these new pressures. I mean, it may be possible that this isn't really an anxiety disorder necessarily.
Right. That's a good point.
This is the reaction that you get when you're thrown into that situation. So I guess before we would run into the medication thing, like Jim said, I think this would be a good time to use some behavioral interventions, some strategies to just help you cope with anxiety.
Absolutely. That's a really good note.
A few things that I would... I'm gonna throw out some ideas, and maybe you can too, Jim, if you have any. I guess first, one thing that I would look into is look at preventative measures. What are you doing outside of work? And taking a look at how you can improve your life, improving your sleep, improving your diet, having some kind of exercise. I'm a big believer that taking care of all of those things outside of the stressful environment is going to help you cope once you get into that stressful environment.
Yeah, I like that. Pre-gaming, in that positive sense of the word, preparing for it in the locker room for your day. And so 2 notes on that. So Eric, first off, Nick's right. We have to give ourselves permission to face change in mood whenever change in environment is occurring, or I'm going through a unique challenge in my life, right? To me, I'm going to diagnose an anxiety disorder whenever I'm seeing it disproportionate. Your level of fear and what you're experiencing is disproportionate to the reality you're facing. When I see it as disruptive, this is getting in the way, it's interfering, it's causing that magic phrase of a clinically significant amount of distress. And I need to see it long term. I need to see it probably I think 3 months is our initial threshold, unless it's something acute. So we are paying attention to that. Now, the good news is this. If it's not an anxiety disorder, if it's just a history of stress and anxiety and whatever, and it doesn't meet that label threshold, it's irrelevant in a sense because our treatment is the same. Anybody's allowed to use these techniques to improve their life. They don't have to wait till it's out of control. And so Nick's absolutely right. Another thing I would add is this. So in the treatment of anxiety, I usually try to teach people to measure their thoughts. I want them to carefully be noticing what is their trigger, because an event usually triggers the anxiety, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a good thing. It could be your boss saying, hey, you're doing such a great job around here, Eric. I don't know how we'd live without you. And then, that's a compliment. But your anxiety will hear that and go, oh my God, they're going to give me more work, or oh no, I'm vital. They don't realize I'm faking it, or whatever. Something can happen. So there's always a trigger. And then there's always an automatic thought. And the automatic thought can be like an emotion. It could be an idea. It could be words. It could be an image. For me, part of the anxiety I have, and one day we're going to do a deep dive into my anxiety, and I'll use myself as a case study to help people. But that is not today. But an automatic thought is any of those things that happen. And if you believe that automatic thought, that negative emotion, or that negative way of feeling or interpretation of the world, you enter into what we call a cognitive distortion. Now, a cognitive distortion is a mental mirage. It's a false interpretation of the world around you. And there's a list of really common ones that a lot of people do. And in my treatment approach with people, I usually reveal that list to them. I try to help them identify which ones they may be guilty of doing. And then we work on 5 strategies that I usually employ to try to bring that person out of that mental mirage, how they can question their reality and find the truth, right? And so you're doing some of that right now, Eric. You talked about being able to logically take care of business, but your body is not cooperating. I would challenge you. I don't think it's a body thing so much. I think it's what Nick talked about. Your body responding to the impression that it's in danger. And so you're having this sympathetic nervous system response to protect you from a lion that isn't there. And so that comes back to you somehow believe something that's not true, that there is a lion, or that there is something in your world that threatens you. And that's why you're having that physical response. And so the thing that I want you to start doing, without exposing you to all the techniques we do, because we don't have time for that today, I want you to at least question carefully, what am I feeling? Where did it come from? Okay, what is it I think about the world right now? What is it I think about myself? And here's the easiest question I want you to ask. Is there any evidence for that? Just ask that. Just do the math in your mind. Where's all the evidence that says how I'm feeling is a fact, and where's all the evidence that says this feeling is not a fact? Do that for me, and I think, Eric, you're going to notice that you're going to start feeling your body change just in reaction to that mental shift. No medicine necessary. So, I'm for chemistry. I think it can help. I think it can be part of the solution. But if we're not doing the thinking approach first, then I want to see how we respond to that before we start going in new directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's some good advice. Try that out. Give it a shot. Let us know. And I think we should do that, Jim. I think we should do a deep dive into that. I think that'd be very helpful. So keep listening. We will get into a deeper discussion into that. Now is probably a good time, too, to say to our listeners, if you have not yet listened to Fan Theory World, you should.
Yeah. Good show.
Yes. So, Eric, I appreciate the letter, but I do have to say that you are wrong about Rocky.
Oh.
Rocky 3 was not better than Rocky 4.
Oh, shots fired. Okay. Yeah. I want to do a Fan Theory World episode about Peppa Pig, which is this children's, neither of you guys have kids, so you're both like, what the hell are you talking about? It's a children's book about a British pig family, and it became a cartoon on Nick Jr., and we watch it religiously, but it has these subtle, like, adult jokes that are in there, and, like, if you're a parent and you've been forced to watch this, you're creating a whiteboard conspiracy theory in your mind of what their universe is like and like the dark secrets that the people in little British town have. And I have this whole theory that I want to unpack about this because I'm telling you it's there. So
all right.
Look for that.
There you go.
Thanks for writing in, brother. Appreciate you.
I agree. Peppa Pig is better than Rocky 3.
That was the takeaway.
I only listen to bits of this show.
Yeah. Jacob comes in right when we need him with the real good summary thought of what just happened. Just want to chime in here, guys. Definitely agree with that pig thing. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for writing in. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about a son who thinks he's the best at everything. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
All right, this week's second Theraproducer is Ben Doughn.
Dr. Doughn.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I actually contacted Ben this morning and said, hey, dude, we need your commercial. And he's like, I'm too sick. So he's been doing a lot of traveling and was too sick to do his commercial.
Feel better.
So I'm going to do his commercial for him.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't plan anything out. So.
Nice. So you and Ben are
this is what
the
you
same
get.
guy. You both contribute 0 to this segment.
Exactly.
This is exactly the same quality that we were getting from Sick Ben.
But I know he's putting something together because he keeps kind of teasing it.
I hope it's like a PowerPoint of pictures.
He doesn't have it together yet. So we're going to check back with him the end of December when his show comes due again.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Ben, for your contribution. We definitely appreciate it. And thanks for helping us keeping the show going.
Yep. And if you'd like to join Ben in doing nothing but contributing to the show, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and join the party.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener writes in about a son who believes he's best at everything.
All right, this one's really funny. My son constantly thinks he is the best at everything.
Is this from your dad?
I thought my mom wrote it.
But no, okay.
It's not, but it's from a mail. But I thought, man, my mom could have written this. My son constantly thinks he's the best at everything. I am not exaggerating that statement. He seems to think that he has mastered the game and is the best player on the team. In reality, he is playing hard but isn't very good. This is just one example. This occurs with almost everything he does. While I love his confidence, I want to make sure that he remains grounded in reality. I really don't want to call him out and break him down either. What advice could you give to someone that has such a high view of themselves? Thanks, Chris.
So we got this in a direct message on Twitter. And this morning, I was putting it into the notes, and I just noticed, like, I missed a line.
Oh, okay.
I missed a lot. Like,
okay. Put the rest out. Yeah, what else did he say?
I don't remember, but it was basketball. So
I remember he was talking about basketball
right.
games. Yeah.
So
it's a really good question. And I think that this is a good point, right? So, like, delusions can work both ways. Like, a delusion is, and again, I use that word in a clinical sense, but obviously we're not going to diagnose this kid as delusional, okay?
Right.
But everything's on a continuum. So here's the deal. A delusion is whenever you have a false interpretation of reality. You're not seeing things that aren't there. You're not hearing things that aren't there. you're just falsely understanding your reality, and you could falsely locate yourself in that reality.
This is the world Jim lives in.
This is my happy time life that I live in which everything's going to work out. So in this case, you have your kid, and they're wicked confident, and you're like, hey, it's cute, like I like it, but I worry that they're somehow disconnecting from their reality, and I don't want them to reach a place where one day the world like crashes in and destroys them, or that they falsely believe they can do something that they can't. And I get that that's a tightrope, right? Because I agree with the writer. I don't want to see you pull your kid aside and say, hey, you realize you're really terrible, right? Or like, you realize you're average, right? Like, I can see where, we have to be thoughtful about that. I think a lot of parents, they want to build up their kids, and they do it. And sometimes we do such a good job of it, and life hasn't come crashing in on them yet, that we can reach this place of like tension where we're like, should I like dial it back? Should I let them know that, they do have to work for this or whatever? And I don't know, Nick. I mean, I feel like you've heard me say this before. There is no shortage of sadness in the world. There's no shortage of people that are cruel. There's no shortage of, people that want to come in and tear the wings off of bugs. And I just feel like life will eventually chasten this person, chasten this kid. It will teach him he's not that good. There will be a coach that says, no, I'm not picking you, or something. I don't feel like the parent needs to come in and belittle them or hurt them, and I see Chris reluctantly saying, I'm not going to do that, and so I want to echo that and say, Chris, good idea, right? Don't come in and hurt a kid. That's never the way that you build a child. But I do think it's okay to ask questions, like, oh, what is this other person on the team doing? They seem to be getting a lot of points. Yeah, he gets points, no. Okay, how are you going to improve? Right? Asking questions about improvement. And if they have that confidence and they're like, no, I don't need to improve, I'm awesome. Okay, then you're going to have to start talking about like realism a little bit and saying, okay, but we should always try to be better, than the last version of ourselves. What can we do? But that's a tricky one, right? It's a good problem to have, I guess, Nick, because, this kid's not in a place of depression or sadness. But at the same time, we can see where an abundance of confidence, an abundance of this can become not very accurate. And so we want to make sure we address that too. What are your thoughts?
Two things. First off, I don't want to get you to, I don't want to alarm you, Chris, but one thing, my very first thought listening to this is, I wonder what insecurities he has in other areas of his life.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's one thing that I've seen happen a lot with kids that believe themselves to be so good at something that you're just kind of like, what are you talking about? Are you not? Are you watching a different game than what I'm watching?
Yes.
When it gets to that point, it seems like it's pretty common that with that particular child, there's some other area of their life that they feel very less than, very insecure about, and then therefore this sport, playing basketball, is their way of equaling or leveling the playing field. So that it's like, I have to be outstanding at this to make up for this other thing. And if I'm not actually outstanding at it, well, then if I can just project that I am and just act like I am, or just believe that I am, it kind of helps make up for something else. So that would be something to just kind of look for. Look at how he's doing in school and look at other areas of his life. Is he making friends? Is he... anything else that we can possibly help him out with in those areas. I think by doing that, you may see a change in what's happening in basketball.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good observation.
And then I think the other thing too, if as a way you may be able to help facilitate and kind of change the way that he talks about basketball, is maybe start praising him for team player type behaviors. Really talking about, hey, that pass that you got, that you gave to this other kid to score, that was great.
Way to read the court and work as a team.
Exactly.
That's a really good idea.
And kind of praise this selflessness. I think it's great how you work hard for your teammates and really kind of praise that component of it, as opposed to, because it sounds like he's really focused on the things that he does really well for him. I think if you kind of reinforce that team player mentality, that may be helpful as well.
No, I love that. And, I definitely want to echo what you said, because in all of my work with children, if I have ever found anybody who has this, like, disproportionate amount of confidence, or they seem to have to always one-up a story. Like, they seem to always have to add more to it. You know, Johnny says, oh, you know, my dad's going to take me to Disneyland. Oh, we went to Disney World and Epcot Center. And if they're embellishing and adding things, and even if they're fictitiously adding things, I think that's such an obvious indicator light. Like, almost 100% of the kids I work with, that if they have that trait, it's because there is some kind of insecurity inside of them. There's a fear that everybody thinks they're less than, or there's a fear that they'll be revealed, or they don't actually believe good things about themselves.
Yeah, we've all had kids like that in the neighborhood that we grew up in, you know, right? Where they just believe themselves to be great, you know, and it's not until much later on in life that you realize that, well, it was, you know, there's a lot of fighting in the home. Mom and dad were constantly at each other, or there's always threats of divorce and all this stuff going on that we never really saw.
Yes.
But definitely played a role in how they project themselves in other situations.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, you know, Chris, go for reality. And so when we go for reality, we have conversations with this person in which we say, hey, is there something in life that you're worried about? Is there something that you don't, you know, that you want to grow in, or that you don't feel like you're doing a very good job at? And getting them to reveal those things in honest conversation by creating a really safe place and not being critical, and not to rescue them. And that's something I think a lot of parents have to challenge themselves on, is when our kid's having a bad thought or feeling discouraged, we tend to want to rescue them from it immediately. And sometimes I just want you to offer silence, or just nod with them and go, yeah, no, I can see how you'd feel that way sometimes. That must be tough. And leave it right there. Don't rescue them from bad. And I think that's important, because when we over-rescue kids, they develop this mentality where they always have to spin the positive, and they run to it too quickly, and that can cause this kind of thing where the person's like hyper-confident, delusional about everything. I don't want that. I want them to kind of, from time to time, have to simmer in a disappointing moment or a discouraging moment without us coming alongside and saying, yeah, you are a piece of crap, but like coming in there and saying, wow, that must be really hard, and just kind of own it there. But no, Chris, I think your instincts are right here. I'm glad you're not desiring to do any kind of deflating or kind of hurtfulness, but I appreciate that you're willing to step into reality as well.
Yep. Very good.
Very
Thank you for writing in. That was a good question.
That was a good one.
Okay, we've come to the last part of our show, which is apologies, patrons, reviews, and announcements, and I don't think we have any of those except for Patreons, right?
I have some apologies.
Oh,
I do. I don't have them scripted, but I'm going through my Twitter feed right now, just finding all the things that I need to apologize for. So
let's start with your mom.
Yeah, dear Mom, I'm sorry for the first 48 episodes of this show. I'd like to apologize for almost everything on our Patreon. You did not raise me this way. It is not a reflection on your parenting, and I'm sorry. And we could just blame Dad.
Exactly.
Dear the San Francisco baseball team, the Giants. I'm sorry that whenever I found out that you were being boycotted by the NAACP for giving money to a political candidate who had done and said really racist things, I'm sorry that my big takeaway from that was, holy crap, the San Francisco Giants still exist. I'm sorry. I think I missed the point of that whole story.
Didn't they win a World Series recently?
Nobody cares, Nick. Nobody even watches baseball around here, except you. And I also want to apologize to World War II for trying really hard to make a joke that WWII was somehow related to WWJD. And my bad, World War II. Don't take it personally. I'd like to apologize to wrestler John Cena. When I found out that he was winning Sports Illustrated's Muhammad Ali Legacy Award for being a stand-up character in a sports world, that I was furious that he's a fake wrestler and not a real athlete, and I nominated Bill Murray for his excellent sportsmanship in the movie Space Jam. So, my bad, John Cena. And I want to say that that's just about it. Yeah, I don't have a ton more apologies than that. Stay tuned. Oh, and I apologize to running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Kareem Hunt, who was recently fired from the Chiefs and is going to be suspended from the NFL for a video that came out of him physically abusing a woman, probably his girlfriend. I apologize to the Patriots for implying that they've already signed him for exactly those things. So, my bad. My bad, Patriots.
All right, and we want to thank our new TheraPals
Yeah.
on Patreon. Do you have those, Jim? Okay, well, thank you to all of you.
Yeah, thanks to all the new THERAPALs. I don't think we have any new
I think
ones.
it was just your mom.
I think it was my mom. So, welcome to our newest, and she's a THERAPOD, actually. So, this is our first episode of the month for December, and so this is when we actually thank all of our THERAPODs, all of our dapper three-toed reptilians, the Special Forces unit of our Mental Health Therapeutic Alliance. We want to thank David Pollock, Easy Whip, Steve, Scoopstronaut, Dan Martin, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Mandy Abayla, John Bankenship, John B., his Twitter feed is amazing, Linda Brandmeier, Leon Kassab, Lori Kallenbach Eltzroth, Tracy Replogle, a.k.a. Mom, David Younce, Corey Owens, Peter Van Pelt, Brad Kefauver, Manuela Musaku, Scoopaholic, and Makia, who added 5 cents to her pledge, making her the alpha female of the Therapods.
And of course, we want to thank our bosses, the Elite 8, mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Villalon, Judy Schneider, Grae Whittaker, majority shareholder, and Dr. Ben Doughn.
Yep, and I actually want to go back to the Therapods because I think we left out Ice Blue Scoop, and that's because her Therapod level actually reached $10.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, Ice Blue Scoop is technically the alpha female of the Theropods because she's like in the nether region between Therapod and Theraproducer.
How did we forget her?
She fell off the first list, so
We're
she's
sorry.
technically we're terrible at Patreoning, but she's the alpha. So, and if you would like to hear this episode uncut, unedited, and enjoy all the many things that we do on our Patreon, like our weekly book club or our discussion groups, we also have another podcast we do there called Afterthoughts, which is sort of a female take on a lot of what we talk about. And soon I'm going to be launching a new thing in January.
I have a note too. I am supposed to make a public apology for implying that Afterthoughts is about Laura airing her grievances with the show, because it's not, and she corrects me on that all the time. She says it's feedback; it's not all bad.
It's not bad. It's just feedback. So we definitely want to thank everybody that supports us and invite everybody listening to join that work. And so we have a little bit going on. We have our book club that's coming up. We're going to be adding new episodes of that. Every week we throw in a new book club chapter, so look for that. And then in January, Nick, I'm going to launch my own little side project to bring to the thing. We've been having a really robust conversation with our patrons and with Twitter and Facebook, asking people, what kind of thing could I bring that might be helpful, kind of like what you're doing with Afterthoughts, adding some more content. And I'll be rolling out that announcement here in the near future. So look for that. It's going to be exciting too.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode, copying, pasting the link in the description. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and on Patreon at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Justin Biebs.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week, Jim's mom.
Your mom goes to therapy.
I want to point out that Jim ended that show by announcing that he would later be making an announcement.
Yes.